You are now listening to The Project. To The Project. To The Project. Where we stop at nothing to bring you the right facts on health, fitness, and psychology. Featuring some of the world's most experienced professionals so you can learn, lift, and live. With your hosts, Meg, Dr. D, and Mehdi. I saw one of the programs from one of the best nutritionists in Kuwait, and I just looked at it and I was disgusted. It was like 800 calories for a person who's training an hour and a half to 2 hours a day. That's insane. That's a crash and burn method. And they're like, yeah, but I've lost weight. Yeah, of course you're going to lose weight. You know, you're eating 800 calories.
We know that to live healthy over a long period of time, we need to eat the right kinds of foods more often than not, which often is like nutritious, non-processed foods. We need to move our bodies in a way that makes us feel good. We need to get enough quality sleep, and we need to do these things consistently.
I do definitely feel like it's that support that you can get from people that are yourself. I mean, can you imagine fathers who are over 40, all of them feeling the same way and trying to motivate each other to be able to make a change? And like you said, it's like, you know, once they get motivated and they can support each other, and then it's like sense of competition also.
All this and more in today's episode. Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of The Project, and I'm not going to have Dr. D do this intro. I'm going to give her a break today.
I really do great intros.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. Your last one was fire. Today, I'm actually really happy, and it's a proud moment for me to have another dad on here that's as passionate as I am about being a father and being a fit father at that. Dr. Anthony Balduzzi. Balduzzi, all right?
Dr. A.
Dr. A. Balduzzi.
Dr. A. We're going to do Dr. A today. Yeah, Dr. A, Dr. D.
I know. Dr. A, Dr. D.
Oh, DJ.
And then Abu DJ. Yeah, I know, right? So, Dr. A, I mean, it's great to have you on. You have the Fit Father Project, you know, mainly for working dads. And I think that's great because, you know, a lot of parents find it very difficult to get into the health atmosphere when they're working like a 9 to 5 or even, you know, 12, 13-hour days. Let's be realistic. So can you talk a little bit about your Fit Father Project, and then we'll dive into the nutritional things that we can talk about and, you know, some of the, you know, key takeaways that, you know, some of our listeners can take from this episode.
Yeah, absolutely. And first off, thanks for having me. This has already been fun, and we're just getting started. You know, growing up, the experiences I had early in my life watching my own dad really shaped my understanding of health. I watched my dad just bust his butt to put food on the table for me, my mom, my little brother. And that was at the expense of his health. You know, working the long days, not doing the right things with his eating, his exercise. And he eventually got so sick that he died at 42 years young. I was just 9 at the time. My little brother was 6. And it obviously devastated our family at the time. And it was such a tragedy. Yet at the same time, it was a gift because it taught me a lesson that people get to learn this early in life. And that's that health is the foundation of so many things that we love. Our foundation of our ability to spend time with our families, to pursue our passions and hobbies, to make money, to provide, to learn, grow. I saw my dad lose all of that when he lost his health. So it imprinted on my mind at a very young age how important this health and fitness stuff is. And it ignited this passion for me to study how can busy parents like my dad and then like my mom afterwards balance and manage the responsibilities of being a parent, of providing and work with maintaining this fitness on a busy schedule when we're also in an environment where it's so easy not to be healthy. So I got so passionate about this. It took me into, you know, bodybuilding and fitness, medical school, and then creating the Fit Father Project with the sole mission of helping busy guys in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond develop simple, sustainable routines, a system with their nutrition, their exercise, with their mindset so they can lose weight, keep it off, and be around to see their kids grow up. So for me, this hits home, but it's become so much bigger. And it's a beautiful thing of all these experiences that I've had because it's led me to conversations and meeting people like you guys who are spreading this good message that it's possible to live healthy after 40. You just need different kinds of strategies.
Mm-hmm. I like the way you're saying balance. And I think a lot of times people in general really have a hard time balancing. Parents, you know, constantly feel bombarded with the idea of like having a career and working and taking care of their family. And so exercise and diet is the last thing on their mind, right? It's just working, being able to put the food on the table, pay the bills, and then spending whatever time they can with their family. So I feel like you're right. I think, unfortunately, because of your father's death, you had to recalculate what exactly can you and a lot of people can do to make, because really, I mean, I don't even know if balance is really something that we can actually realistically achieve, but trying to prioritize that in our mind is really important.
Yeah, well, I'd say what I've come to discover is it's about having like a system. Like all people that are successful with their nutrition and their exercise, they have some kind of system that works for them. They have a system with their nutrition. They have a system with their sleep. They have a system with their exercise. And there's so many different systems that work. If we don't have a system, if we don't have some kind of routine habit structure that works for us at our age, our metabolism, our body, et cetera, when life is throwing all this busyness at us, that's when we just don't have any structure to keep us moving forward. And I think a mindset thing that a lot of people, kind of get wrong is that they feel that when they're over 40, that their health and their life, their life and their work responsibilities and their health are like two separate things, like these two Venn diagrams. When you help people collapse this down and understand this is one thing, this is your life. You have this body, and the quality of your energy, the way it looks and feels is ultimately affecting everything you do. When you can help people collapse that distinction and understand this is just one game, then we can manage this whole system and we can start seeing some progress.
It's funny that you mentioned that and the busyness of everything. And, I'm a working dad. I work behind a desk all day. And, I read several studies that movement actually enhances, it enhances your cognitive ability to perform. And you actually do perform at a higher rate when you are moving around and the blood's flowing. So, after I read those studies, I took it upon myself that every about hour and 15 minutes, I'd force myself, regardless of how busy I was, to get up from the desk, go for a walk for 15 minutes around our building. And I would go outside the building, as hot as it is in the summer in Kuwait. I mean, not sure if you're familiar with Kuwait, but it gets up to about 120 degrees. And I never gave a shit because I knew getting outside.
And Arizona, we got.
Yeah, I was going to say Arizona.
Similar climate.
All right, there you go. So, I mean, just getting outside and getting a little bit of that sunlight for 15 minutes and that walk and getting to accumulate around 800 steps or whatever it was,
right,
made a huge difference. In having that system in place really kind of set the foundation for me to continue with my fitness and my health journey throughout. And you talk about a lot of neuroscience. Now, what are some of the perspectives you could share on that systematic approach that people can use?
As it relates to neuroscience specifically? Well, essentially, I'll say this. We know that to live healthy over a long period of time, we need to eat the right kinds of foods more often than not, which often is like nutritious, non-processed foods. We need to move our bodies in a way that makes us feel good. We need to get enough quality sleep, and we need to do these things consistently. So with the health and fitness, when someone's not hitting the mark that they want with their health and fitness, it's not that they don't know what they need to be doing. It's that they're not executing on the behaviors that they know are moving in the right direction. So ultimately, what I'm trying to say in very simple terms is health and fitness is a behaviors game. It is about your psychology. It is about your behaviors. And a lot of this comes down to the balance of neurotransmitters in your brain and your body, and how this all kind of creates an emotional and mental environment that enables you to move forward. So for example, with nutrition, and this will be a little more, not necessarily neurochemically based, but with nutrition, every time we need to go eat a healthy meal, we need to exert some kind of conscious willpower to decide, what am I going to get into my body? I got to go have a decision, right? And if people are eating 3 meals a day, 7 meals a week, 21 meals is an example here. Busy guy who's got to find 21 decision points where he's got to get the right foods into his routine. There's a lot of decision fatigue. In like a stressful life, maybe some, addictions, certain sleeping enough and transmitters are out of balance. You have where it's going to be very tough to be consistent over the long haul. So a couple things we need to do is, one, we need to create a structure, especially early on, that removes a lot of this decision fatigue, removes a lot of the complication and guesswork, so that we can start building this kind of momentum, making more regimented, following a system that enables us to be more successful. And then two, actually working on improving the neurochemistry itself, which comes down to things like getting sunshine for a good circadian rhythm, drinking enough water, eating food, a bunch of sugar and processed crap, like the stuff we know. But it's like, how do you distill it down into a simple, actionable system? That's what really drives results for people.
Yeah, and like you said, I think a lot of people do. And a lot of people that I work with that have depression or anxiety. And, especially now with, COVID being here, a year, for us, still confused, and we still go out to certain places. We can't eat at restaurants. So I feel like a lot of people have minimized. I mean, I'm one of them. Like I used to work, I teach, and then I go to the clinic. I come home. By the time I come home, I'm tired. Although my job's most mainly is sitting down, except teaching. But still, I feel like people have been struggling because they are not moving. We're doing everything virtual, and we're sitting around, and also that they're depressed and anxious. And like you said, I think one of my biggest struggles, Dr. A, is that people know what they're supposed to do. They know what food to eat. They have seen. I mean, I see people that have seen. They see nutritionists and have seen nutritionists. They know that they're supposed to exercise and actually might have exercised and do not do. I do talk about the neurotransmitters and serotonins. And I just feel like I don't really know what takes someone to get motivated. Especially now, I find it more difficult because people feel like maybe they're just tired of this, COVID or the situation we're in, maybe because future is not predictable right now. And in your project and working with these fathers, especially after 40, I am over 40. So the idea is that really, I mean, for me, it's first of all, I have to work out because Maddie will give me a hard time. But for me, it's become a lifestyle. But to be able to tell my patient, for example, this is a lifestyle, you got to do it. It's so hard. What have you done to motivate these fathers that are part of your program?
Yeah. So, I mean, on a surface level, if you get someone, let's just say exercise is a very tangible example we can use here. You're taking someone who does not currently exercise or feels like they're too busy, but they know they should and they want to, and you're wanting them to go start exercise. So they need to go carve out time out of their schedule. They need to go do something that's relatively uncomfortable that they may not feel like they've done in a long time. Their joints may be hurting. There's a lot of obstacles here. So what makes that worth it? And what makes that worth it is our emotional connection to why this behavior and the benefit of doing this behavior and the cost of not doing it makes it propelling and compelling enough that we do this. So one thing we do with our clients before we start them on nutrition or exercise plans is we help them do some deep dive reflection and journaling, where they basically write down what all their current behaviors are with their health, fitness, exercise, or lack thereof, and how it affects every single area of their lives that they care about. How does your lack of exercise or the way you're moving your body affect your ability to be a good parent? How does it affect your ability to make money? How does it affect your spirituality, your sense of integrity? All the gamut, especially if we can find someone's core values that actually care about. We need to make these new connections between what they are looking to do with this new behavior and connect that to their core values. Because psychologically, I don't need to tell you this, we want to be consistent with these identities we have. We have a very strong urge to be consistent. So if we can increase this web of things and encompass now these new healthy behaviors that are now congruent, because we feel deep down we know why it's so important, it's going to be a lot more likely that we have this activation energy to succeed. And the beautiful thing about this health and fitness stuff is there's a lot of inertia right up and going. So you need this kind of like the rocket needs to launch. It needs the huge fuel boost to get up out of the gravitational pull. But once you're up there, it's kind of a self-propelling force because you exercise and then you get the endorphins and kephalins. You feel great. And it can be motivating to almost continue the results themselves. So the first thing is really helping people rewire their neuroassociations by understanding that going to the gym is not just because I want to burn calories or have a better butt or better biceps or whatever this ends up being. It's because I'm going there because this is my future. This is what I need to do today to make sure I'm going to be there for my kids, my grandkids, or maybe whatever the reasons are. There's no right or wrong. It's for each of us to discover what I call, the why power. A lot of us have talked about this before, but it's like the deep connection they have to these behaviors that's going to help someone, get started. And then also having the right environment around you that supports you in those early stages. Like when you're starting this fitness journey, it's like that small flame that you need to kindle. You need to blow on it and make sure that it gets some momentum to get going. So if you don't know that why, and we have our members actually write like mission statements. They write it, they tape it on their wall. Like I'm committed to exercising 3 times per week and following this meal plan because I know this is necessary for me to become the strongest version of myself, to be there and set a good example for my kids. Whatever it is, new neuroassociations with those behaviors is a prerequisite, in my opinion, to long-term success. Otherwise, we're doing something that's taking willpower, decision fatigue. There's friction in our schedule. We don't feel very aligned. We can do that for a couple of weeks, but then we fall off track, which is essentially the whole system we have in the fitness industry right now. But if we start early on with getting alignment and really having the person's psyche and deep emotional being, I guess you could say, connect to why these behaviors are key, there's a lot more emotive force behind it that can help people be successful.
I love how you bring in inertia, and that is a word that I have not heard in the longest time. I mean, my background is marketing, and there's consumer inertia of, how to make people buy a product and continue buying that product afterwards, even when superior products come out on the market. And you nipped it in the bud, and that's probably the best I've ever heard anyone on this show break it down to someone valuing their health at a higher level, because you're right. You're 100% right. If we can show them the value in exercising and taking on these other things and how it will improve their other roles in life. And I mean, so much as, when guys ask me, what do you do to exercise or how do you do it? I say, look, I do CrossFit. I do it competitively. And I value competing at my age, and I hope to compete till the day I die. And that's me, though. I said, you don't need CrossFit. You need something that's going to help you live a better life. When was the last time you ran after your son? When was the last time you played soccer? When was the last time you played around with your friends? How many times have you joked around with a buddy of yours and he's in better health and, he outdoes you on something? It hurts, especially if you were ahead in the game. It's hard to get people to find that value. So besides having them journal it and write it down, because it's easy for someone to write it down and say, oh, I could do better here, I could do better there, I could do better there. But the implementation strategy, I think, is the biggest hurdle for most people. For me, it was running after my, 8-month-old kid crawling on the ground, and I was winded. And that to me was like, shoot, I'm 34 at the time. And if I can't do this now, what the hell is going to happen to me when I'm 45 or 50? And I was smoking, a pack and a half a day. I weighed about 260 pounds. Like, I was on a path to nowhere. And, luckily I had been in bodybuilding. I had been a baseball athlete my whole life. So, I knew what needed to be done to get there and what workouts and all that stuff. I implemented it, and thank God I'm in a good place right now physically. Granted, I still do CrossFit, but, health-wise, I think I'm better off. But how do you get people to implement that into a part of their lives?
Yeah, amazing question. Are you guys familiar with a man named Jonathan Haidt, Haidt? He's a psychologist and thinker here in the United States. He has a really cool analogy about this where he says, anytime you want to make change, you are acting as three different aspects of yourself. He calls it the elephant, the rider, and the path. So imagine a man in a forest. He's riding an elephant, huge, powerful animal, can go wherever he wants to, but he wants to direct this elephant down the path. And he's walking down through the forest, but he also wants to make sure he picks the path that's going to be easiest, doesn't have to go through a lot of different kinds of trees. So the idea here is that we need to get all three aspects of ourselves, the elephant, the rider, and the path, aligned to be successful. The elephant is this deep emotional aspect, our subconscious mind, our desires, our ego, these aspects of us that cause either pleasure or pain, but are wrapped up in our decision-making every single day, as a basis of our awareness. So the kind of moment that you had there where you're winded chasing your kid and you're like, this is a problem. Or maybe a guy has chest pain, goes to the ER. This is a problem. Some of those are things that are kind of prodding the elephant, getting the elephant a little bit motivated. So we can motivate with pleasure. We could do the journaling and the deep discovery and look at what are the good things that can happen. But it's also important to look at the scary stuff, like to future project. Like, the pain is very motivating for humans. You touch a stove for the first time, that this is like one of the most motivating forces is moving away from that. So we have guys future cast this pain of like, what is it really going to be like if we're being real with ourselves? We continue the way we're living today into the next 20 years, it's not going to be a good path. So we motivate this elephant, but that's only part of it. Elephant's motivated. The rider still needs to know where to go. So there's this aspect of clarity. You had the gift through your athletic background that you knew what to do. You knew that you could do these kinds of exercises, so mobility routines, change your nutrition in this way. Guys need to get the clarity. If you don't have some kind of plan to follow, then you're in this nebulous mind space where there's decision fatigue. You're jumping from this to that. Like, once you have the emotion, you need a simple system to stick to. And the cool thing is there's so many different systems that work. I'm not saying there's one system, but you need something to follow. Like, why are so many people successful with intermittent fasting as a particular kind of eating? Well, it's because it's very simple. It's like, okay, you push back that first meal until noon, and then you have a small snack and you have dinner. You're compressing your calories. This is a structure, a system. That's something that's getting that rider. That's the one thing I'm going to do. So that's the rider aspect. The rider needs a plan, which is clarity. So the elephant needs that emotion. Then you need the clarity. And what is the path? The path is your environment. So there's an easy path and there's a hard path. The hard path has trees that are falling over. There's wild animals all around it. These are our environments in our homes. These are our friends and our family. This is the ecosystem that we're operating in. So how do we also think about cleaning up the environment? In a practical way, this might mean doing an audit of all the different kinds of food and crap in your house that's leading you to these bad behaviors and getting all that stuff gone. Another example of maybe paving the path here would be, you need to get to the gym. So on Sunday, you pre-plan 2 to 3 times where you're going to go exercise. And these are written in your schedule like meetings. You lay your gym clothes out the day before. You get an accountability partner. All these things are paving the path. But I'm a firm believer that you need all 3 things. You need the emotion, you need the clarity, and you need the environment. And I think it's a powerful analogy. And when you look at people who are not succeeding long-term with fitness, it's one of these 3 things. They either don't have the deep emotion there and they kind of want it. They see the cover of the fitness model and they're like, that would be really cool to have, but it's really not motivating enough, because when push comes to shove, they're tired. Crappy food is right there. They're like, I'd rather have this short-term pleasure, right? So there's not enough emotive force. Or a lot of people have enough emotive force, but they don't have the clarity, and then they spin their wheels. And a lot of times you can have those first 2 aspects, but have a really counterproductive environment around you that's making it hard. So if you're an ex-smoker and you're hanging out with a bunch of people that just smoke and drink all the time, like, it's probably not going to be the best for your future. So it's one valuable way I like to think about it.
And actually, it's great to say that, because if you think about it, it can apply to everything in life, right? Mm-hmm. It sounds like what you're really saying is that we need to be on a system. We need to define a goal, and we need to make sure that everything that we plan and every step we take has to be toward that goal. And any obstacles that's going to stop me from getting into that goal is we clean it up. So it can work in many ways, in how you get motivated to eat and exercise, or to even live a healthier lifestyle, or even to achieve that goal of whatever the certain weight that you want, or not smoking, not drinking, doing all that. So it sounds like it makes perfect sense. And I think that when people can get that kind of a clarity in those steps, I think they made them sound so easy to follow in a way, Because like when I talk to people, like, well, what is your goal? Besides why are you here with me? Do you have a goal? And people are like, I don't know, and even simple goal, like if you can't even have that idea, and what can we do to take it, and who's going to stop you from achieving it, then people are just going to be circling, like you said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we have energy, right? And it's going to spin out of control without the structure.
That's right.
I got a question. It's a 2-part question for both of you, actually. And it leads into a word that you both have just used, achieve. And achievability, and looking at that guy on the magazine, or that woman on the magazine with a shredded 6-pack and, like all the airbrushed whatever. I think a lot of people fool themselves in thinking that it's very achievable, when it's actually extremely difficult to get to that state and to get to that body frame. And sometimes, they don't know that these people are on drugs, steroids or whatnot, and, going on caloric diets of like 800 or 900 calories a day. So people will see their diet plans like, oh, all right, I'm going to jump on this. I'm going to do their workout. And I'm sure you've seen it a million times where people do it. They burn out within the first week or 2. They can't hack it. And the 5 pounds they lost, they bring back on as 10 or 15 pounds. So how do you actually set them up so that they know that their achievability should come within reason? For instance, I had someone say, oh, I want to do, a bar muscle up. And he jumped up on the bar and he was trying to like climb up there like a monkey. And I'm like, dude, you have to be able to do, a strict chest to bar. You have to be able to do a pull up. There's prerequisites. And it's, it's almost a 6-month process to do it right. And it's the same thing with weight loss. I lost all my weight over, I'd say a year and 3 months. And I was very diligent about it, very careful. I took my BMI, my body mass index. I looked at all my numbers, because seeing that was something I could go by as a rubric, so to speak, every month or every week. So how can you set that up? And Dr. D, you could chime in afterwards, of how can we convince people into having realistic goals that are achievable in a short frame of time? Because nowadays, everyone wants the quick fix and they want to see it now. They expect to do 30 crunches and see the results tomorrow. How do you set that up, man?
I'm assuming it works well in your Father Fit project. So I think the idea is that maybe we can use that project in trying to explain that with the people you work with.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it is in the structure that we kind of figured out. And I'd say my first answer to this would be, I believe what fundamentally motivates us more than anything is forward progress. Like the end goal is awesome. Like part of it is we have this idea, and that's kind of part of the elephant we've been talking about, is this grand vision, the emotion of what we might create. But what we really love is seeing forward progress. And so with our program members, we help them take this thing 30 days at a time because it's long enough of a gap that you can make substantial results. I mean, you can lose 15 pounds in 30 days, but it's short enough that it's manageable. Like it's really hard to you can't execute a 60-day plan. You could execute a 1-day plan 60 times over and over. So what we help people do is build this activation energy because again, we're escaping inertia early. So I believe those first 30 days of a change are very critical. So we get established on these systems and we're tracking our progress over a short period of time. And then we're able to assess and readjust and then set the next horizon. And I think it's an easier way for people to approach these things and these big abstract goals. So specifically what someone may do is do that deep reflection, write their mission statement, get very clear on what's going to motivate them and what they're going to do over 30 days. And then they're going to track their progress in some way, shape, or form every single day. Because an important thing to understand is with any health and fitness journey is it's like the furthest thing from linear progress. You don't just like lose weight consistently. It's an up and a down and a zig and a zag and you're on the plan and you're off the plan. So it's like, how do you create a structure that has the kind of guardrails that these little bings that you go off course are smaller and tighter? So we have our members weigh themselves frequently. We have them do check-ins on Monday, Friday, and Sunday. They're posting progress updates and they're going after a 30-day target, which often is doing something very reasonable, like losing their first 10 pounds. And then with the confidence into your next month, et cetera. So the very simple answer is you take this big goal and you scrunch it down into a very achievable time window. And then you put like feedback loops in there to make sure that people are checking in and moving forward. Because it's okay if you went out with friends and family and you ate 3 pieces of 3 whole pizza, whatever it is, you ate way more than you were planning on it, as long as you have some kind of process to get back on track and you don't fall into this tailspin.
That's a good point. One more quick question. What do you do with the people that put on a little bit of weight in the beginning because they're adding muscle? You know, and that's one thing that I've seen a lot of people struggle with. I knew this getting back into fitness, that I was going to put a little bit of weight on in the first, couple weeks or whatever, because you're building muscle at the end of the day. You're building muscle and you're adding on to your weight. So how have you tackled that within that first 30 days?
Yeah, well, I mean, you have different metrics of measurement, right? Weight is definitely something good to track for sure, but you can also be taking measurements. You could be taking photos. You're tracking your metrics on your workouts. Like the main workouts we use in the first 30 days for our program they're basically they're very similar to CrossFit, but for guys like 40 plus specifically, in the sense that they're metabolic conditioning workouts. We're having guys do foundational motions like swings, squats, shoulder presses, push-ups, renegade rows in a circuit. So they're getting strength training. And the cool thing about that is you can track your time. It's something I love about CrossFit. It's very tangible. It's like, I did this workout in X. So you want to give yourself many different, because we were trying to get activation energy, because we're trying to build this momentum of success and get this intrinsic motivation to kick in. We want to have as many different feedback and progress loops that we can to gauge progress. So weight is one, performance on the workouts another, measurements is another. Things we talk about a lot in our program members is non-scale victories, NSVs. Maybe some of the office noticed that your shoulders are looking a little broader and your waist is there. Or maybe you did go up the stairs and you weren't winded at all. Tracking these things and being very present to the NSVs is actually key, because it starts to retrain your neuroassociations to look for more success and to feel like you're creating a slightly new identity in this sense to be aligned to these new behaviors. And
I'm sure that the support of other people that are doing the same thing can also, that's another thing, is that when you're setting these goals or when you want to start to do, it's not, I'm sure that, I don't know, but maybe you can tell us more about your program. Like, did you find some obstacles at the beginning with fathers who are over 40 doing this? Or did you feel like, people were welcoming this idea?
Well, what's interesting is what we found is when we started the program, like very early on, let's just say about 8 years ago, we were designing the meal plans, the workouts, and some accountability coaching. But it wasn't until the project actually got a lot of members and we started putting them in community with one another that the results started becoming tremendous. Because that was like the X factor of the magic of being around like-minded, positive people. It's kind of like that, the path or the environment we talked about with the elephant rider. And the path is key because you feel understood. You feel connected. We're very social creatures, so we want to feel connected, especially if we're connected in the vein of something that we're all moving forward in a better direction, like an empowering connection is huge. And I also think there's a sense of reinvigorated pride that can come for guys in particular that can help. Like we were talking about earlier, how like the drive of competition often keeps us going. These guys get that. Some of this old fire and this old spark can kind of reflame up when you're around other guys and everyone's cheering each other on, setting new PR. So I think it's absolutely essential to be in community because we need to shake up that environment. And the group that got us unhealthy or the situations and the variables needs to be shifted. And I think community can't be overstated. So listening to podcasts like this, being a part of a program where there's interaction with other people is so essential. I think there's a lot of people right now going on silent diets by themselves in their kitchens, losing motivation in isolation. And the people that are successful tend to do it in big things. Like let's talk about a CrossFit box for a second. Holy crap. Is that not like just an energy powerhouse of like irrationally passionate people who are super
it's a cult,
into
man. It's
fitness?
a cult.
they
all
is that
say
not
it's a
half
cult.
of the magic though? It's like, it's gotta be,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, no, it is 100%. Yeah, you bond with people. I mean, you get that. There's that bond. That's why people kind of, in CrossFit, they eat the same. They train the same. It's, there's a lot of things that bring the community together. It's like a sports team, I played baseball my whole life. I was a baseball coach, and chemistry means a lot on a team. And once that chemistry is built up, so much can happen on the field. And you have that bond with people. And I like what you're saying, man, because when you create that club atmosphere of, it's a secluded club of guys that follow your program or follow your podcast or follow whatever it is, they're going to come together as a unit. And it's like, hey, man, check out my progress here. Look at what I did this week. Look at this PR. And it really breeds success.
Mm-hmm. And as coaches, the community can do more for the community than you ever could, one to many.
Yeah, 100%.
And it's just the truth. Like right now we have over 40,000 members in over 100 countries. Those guys are coaching and supporting each other. Like I could go away, they'll be successful because the energy and the wisdom there too. And here's another cool thing I've seen is getting on the other side of a fitness journey. Let's say you've gone through, you lost your 100 pounds, you made your amazing transformation, you got the abs in your 60s. Being able to come back and then share and then teach is the capstone of experience, because we learn things, but then that's only part, that's our up. And then it's the re-gifting and the re-giving of this experience that solidifies it even more for us and then rises the whole tide. It's a reason that both of you with so much expertise are sharing your stories here, right? You're teaching, you're inspiring. And what's really cool is you can get everyday people to do this too. Like Joe from Kansas is helping, Jane from Germany, like get this stuff figured out. And it's so rewarding. And then it just get the positive feedback loop starts to kick in.
Right. And I think I do definitely feel like that it's that support that you can get from people that are yourself. I mean, can you imagine fathers who are over 40, all of them feeling the same way and trying to motivate each other to be able to make a change? And like you said, it's like, once they get motivated and they can support each other, and then it's like sense of competition also, where you've got other people thinking like you, they're competing with each other, they're, measuring whatever it is that, what they lost or how are they doing their daily activity or their routine. Yeah. I think this is, I think that's why even in therapy, I feel like sometimes group therapy matters a lot more, or support therapy matters a lot more than individual, because I feel like it's nice to know that you're not alone in these particular things. So now you started this Fit Father. What do you start project?
We already did. We didn't even have it. So we have it. Yeah. By popular demand, we have, yes. And I think
this is not fair.
Yeah, exactly. It wouldn't be fair.
It wouldn't be fair.
The women are doing amazing. They're kicking butt. One thing is we wanted to talk about neuroscience here, but what raises serotonin levels more than like community and camaraderie? It's one of the main functions of this neurotransmitter itself. And so it's like people who are feeling happy and have a high sense of well-being are going to be more likely to make good food decisions than people who are stressed and anxious and depressed, right? Because we self-medicate with many different things. Food would certainly be one of the major ones that we're biologically hardwired to use. So if you can help activate a healthier neurochemical balance in many ways, right? Improve movement, improve community, improve sunshine, right kind of supplementation perhaps, then you're creating this neurochemical environment that makes it more likely that you succeed, which is, again, positive momentum.
No, and it's true. I think that's a good point, because I feel like when people are together, I mean, it's the same things like who lives longer? People that have friends, right?
Right.
People that are alone don't live long. I think it's because it gives you support, and they don't have to be, sometimes people don't have family members, then they can have friends, and they can have support, and they can have a sense of community, and they feel like a sense of belonging, which brings in your neurotransmitters and it increases. It's very, very true.
So you got serotonin from community, right? And then you're tracking your progress on your workouts. So you're getting dopamine, dopamine drives to like, I got my new workout, I'm going to hit my PR, and the weight scale's going down. And you're like, the same things that activate someone to become addicted to gambling and pulling the slot machine, you can kind of use some of these same principles in a way in your own life for like productive good means. And that's driving you forward. You're getting positive reinforcement with your family and friends. You're feeling better, which is intrinsically motivating. Your inflammation levels are lower, so you're thinking better and your energy is better. It's just like, wow, that's real transformation. And it's totally possible at any age. Like we've had people in their 60s lose over 150 pounds. So it's
That's
like,
amazing.
you're not too late, you know?
It's harder, I think. I mean, personally, as a CrossFitter and, in the masters category, the old guy category, I joke around with, my friends, they're all younger and I'm like, yeah, I'm old as hell. I shouldn't be doing this shit anymore. But my CrossFit buddy, that's another dad who's my age, is in another country. He lives in Lebanon. We've never met. We talk over Instagram just because when you get to an older age, it's very hard to find that affiliation within a workout community, because the older you get, the less people there are doing what you're doing. And that's the thing. And when the older guys that are my age, they're 38 walking into the gym and they see me, they're like, oh shit, this guy's climbing up ropes, doing bar muscle ups, ring muscle ups. And, they're like, they get intimidated, they walk away. When in reality, they should come in and join me. And I've never once said, oh, I'm too good for this. I always tell guys, I'm like, dude, let's do it. Do it with me. We'll knock down the rep scheme. I'll do everything with you, and it's so hard for some guys to see that and they think they're so far gone. And it took one of my clients 2 weeks. He was ready to quit. And I looked at him, I go, dude, do you realize you're walking up straight now? Like you're not hunched over. And he was like, yeah. And, he talked about other things that were going on in his life that I didn't need to hear at that moment, that were happening in his life. And I was like, dude, that's good for you, man. I'm glad that, things are looking better. And that's the thing I think a lot of older guys need to realize is when they do take those first steps and they join a community, they're going to see noticeable changes that help them later on. But how do you gather these guys that are willing to take that plunge together? Because it's so hard. It's so hard for me to find guys my age that are doing what I do.
I also want to add that in this part of the world, I feel like sometimes when people hit 40, 45, they start to act like they're old and they start to act like,
normalized.
And this myth about, no, I'm too old, I'm set in my ways, you can't, make me change. Like even with me and we're helping people, like this idea is like, you're only 45. No, I'm set in my ways. I'm getting old now. I don't really think I can make all these changes. And they start to they act. So I mean, same thing with media. I always want to know, for me, I don't feel my age. I don't want to act my age. I don't feel like there's any age that's going to make me feel that I started working out late, And so it's always here, especially this part of the world. I feel like somehow when they get to a certain age after 40, they start to talk like they're declining, that they're dying anytime soon. So I don't know if that's your experience in the US also.
It is. I mean, it's certainly a culture. I mean, I was looking up the stats the other day. I think in the United States, at least, it's like over 40% of men over 40 are overweight or obese. Like that's half. So 1 in 2.
Wow.
Okay. And that comes around with heart disease, diabetes, cancer risk, all these things. So the normalization is a thing, right? And this is part of that environment we're talking about. Like a fish doesn't realize it's in water when you're in water your whole life. So how do you shake someone up? And I think the way you do that is a couple of things, is having a real authentic conversation, like this kind of talk, or like getting real with people what the cost of these things are so they can do that reflection. But probably most powerfully is having them see models of guys that are maybe even worse than them. Like we have a lot of guys that come in and be like, holy crap, like that guy was like bad off and now he's in better shape than me. So these kind of stories and our strategy is just to share more success out there to inspire the people, whether that's in their heart that this is possible. And I suppose in my life experience, I've realized you can't exactly, like they say, you can't drag a horse to water, or you can't tug someone forward through. It almost has to come forward through them. So my strategy has always been like, how can we be the biggest lighthouse possible and just shine this light far and wide that when people see it, if it hits them and they feel congruent, they come. And the cool thing is that the more guys that come, and for us, it was like 10 years of one guy at a time to like build up to, the community that we've made. But the more people that come, there's this kind of momentum. They're telling their friends and the family, because imagine we get healthy. And what ultimately happens is when we get healthy and we achieve like a sustainable transformation, we become a beacon and a locus of light in our micro family and community. Like our spouse and our kids are going to probably change some of their behaviors too. And we get healthy together. We have the ability to help our distant family. And what's amazing is there's 7 billion of us So if like you do that a couple times and we see all these different connections that can happen, change can happen very, very quickly and powerfully. But it starts with the individual. And I think it's like be the change you want to see in the world is trite advice, but it's also very true in a way. So if guys are listening to this right now, they're either like in shape, or if you're not, like clearly there's that part of you that knows that this is something worth investing in.
I want people to be able to make these changes without having to wait. Like I have a friend who, I mean, he wasn't like overweight or anything, but lifestyle not good, not exercising, had back problem. Like sometimes I feel like people have to wait till like physically they're declining when they're over 40, and then they suddenly is like, no, but I really want to live. Or when they start realizing they have cholesterol and high blood pressure, which puts them more at risk of heart attack, then they're like, oh my God, no, I really need to make a change. And we don't need to wait. So when someone doesn't have a high blood pressure, cholesterol, and they're not living a healthy lifestyle, they're like, oh, it's okay, I'm still healthy.
Yes.
No, we should not wait for something traumatic to happen.
Yeah, guys are stubborn. A lot of people do wait until, a really bad thing like the chest pain, the diagnosis of whatever you have. And some people, that is their path. So I'm not going to discount that, because that is sometimes enough activation energy to get someone going. In some instances, there's a lot of hard-headed guys that they need to have, the first bad, scary thing happen at the doctor to get going. And maybe that's there. But you're right. I mean, the beautiful thing about motivation is it can be activated through this reflection at like any time. We could find that early. And it's obviously the better method, because then you don't have to dig out of a hole. You can just start moving forward. There's many ways. And I think oftentimes when we start to relate these things to our families, we didn't decide to create like the Fit Men Project. We wanted the Fit Father Project, because it's like oftentimes just looking at your kids, like sometimes can help well up this reason earlier before bad things happen.
Yeah, and it's true. And I think that if once you start prioritizing that this is important, this would make me live longer, you're right. I think sometimes we need, just like, people that want to rehab, right? When they're doing drugs and alcohols, like sometimes they have to hit bottom before they realize that they really have a problem. So I think that's right. And I just wish that we can educate more and more people where they can start younger and then they can make it as a life. This is all about changing your lifestyle.
Dr. Egg, quick question now. I mean, all right, so we've talked about the mindset. We've got into that. We dived into that real deep. Now let's go into the nitty gritty. What do your programs look like, or what models of a good program would you recommend to people who are, let's talk about the two groups, because we have two groups that listen to the show. We have the people that are looking to better their lives and they're not really in a great fitness state. And then we have the very fit trainers that listen to the show and they're trying to get their clients healthier and fitter at the same time. And one of the biggest things that I see here in Kuwait, and this is from some of the so-called best, and I'm doing the quotation things, nutritionists here, is I saw one of the programs from one of the best nutritionists in Kuwait, and I just looked at it and I was disgusted. I was like 800 calories for a person who's training, an hour and a half to 2 hours a day.
Yeah.
That's insane. That's a crash and burn method. And they're like, yeah, but I've lost weight. Yeah, of course you're going to lose weight. You're eating 800 calories.
Yeah.
You should be at least consuming, around like at least 1,800 if you're working out that much. And, you get a lot of people that go in with the reverse dieting and, they come at you with, okay, well, why don't you up your calories? And there's so much crap information out there. And you seem like you have it leveled out really well for your clients. So how would you address these two pools? Let's take the athlete or the coach pool first, and then go into the person looking to get fitter and healthier.
Absolutely. So part of my background and what I got really into is I was a competitive bodybuilder for many years. So I got really into tracking macros, all the calorie manipulation that goes into particularly contest prep, but also gaining weight. And what I've learned is that most clients, the everyday dad, mom, like macro tracking is not only not necessary, but it's just not sustainable for them over the long haul. What is necessary is to help your clients find a meal, I'll say a nutrition strategy that works uniquely for them. So in our Fit Father program, one of our approaches is before we talk about foods you may need to be eating, we help them decide on a meal timing setup that works uniquely for them. So we have 5 different meal timing setups in my work. Some are intermittent fasting. Some may include breakfast. Some might be for people who work shift work, night shift, third shift for nurses, doctors, EMTs, etc. We give them different options. And the reason I think this is important is it kind of comes down to like my thinking about this is the structure is everything, because we hang everything on the structure. And so when you can have someone take ownership over a structure, it's like, hey, for me, this is what I think is going to be best. This is when I'm going to have my meal timing. We've done a couple subtle and important things. The first important thing is we gave them ownership over it. The second thing is we've made nutrition proactive instead of reactive, because then you have a plan, right? You know generally what you're going to be following. So we've given the rider, to loop this back, a little more clarity on what's going on. And now you need someone to lose weight, but you want to do it sustainably. Obviously, any diet under 1,000 calories is absolutely crazy, right? And the cool thing is that, eating a diet of 2,000 calories for many guys over 40 is plenty to be losing a good clip of weight. So what we help them do is basically build healthier plates of food. And each plate, when you build, we call it a perfect plate. You take a big plate of food, half the plate's veggies, a quarter's protein, and a quarter's some healthy carbs or healthy fats. You can manipulate it how you want for the kind of macros that you might want in there. But point being, each one of those plates of healthy food is going to be around 600 calories at most.
Yeah.
You do that 3 times a day, you're 1,800 calories. So you don't even need to count a damn calorie, but you're within a general calorie target that's going to be sustainable. Other things that we're big proponents of is standardizing at least the first meal, if not the first 1 to 2 meals of the day. Because for busy people, and you look at the people who are most successful with nutrition, they have go-to meals. They know what they're having for breakfast. Typically, they have go-to lunches.
Overnight
dinner
oats.
is good for yeah, you're right. Overnight oats. I just had some right before coming on. Right,
it's the easiest thing to prepare. And that's what I recommend to people all the time.
Sure, right. Berries, hemp seeds, overnight oats. It's amazing. But point being is the bigger thing is that we help our clients decide on their go-to meals for their first 2 meals of the day, and they're uniquely theirs based on their preferences, their palates, what their family eats. If they're vegetarian, if they're an omnivore, whatever it is. You got your go-to meals. And this is key because it removes decision fatigue. You know what you're doing. So it's a little more automatic, and ideally it's quick. So for example, a guy might get up in the morning, make some awesome power breakfast smoothie that has a bunch of great stuff in there. And then he might have a salad with some protein for lunch. He has a pre-planned snack of some fruit or some nuts or whatever he has, and then has more variety for dinner. So it could be shake, salad, snack, supper. Whatever that structure is, we install that first and foremost. And we help our clients make it their own, so they have ownership. Because the problem is, you give someone a paper diet that says 8 ounces of chicken with this broccoli or this sweet potato. That's not theirs. They're following it. They become a slave to a piece of paper. They don't get to learn the background of this thing, and it's not their integrated system. So when you help your clients develop an integrated system from day one in nutrition, it's great. Because a big objection many clients have coming to us is I just don't have the time to exercise. I'm super busy. And the cool thing is nutrition is probably the most motivating things to start someone on. We have guys who've lost 100 pounds who never touched a dumbbell or a treadmill. They just walked every day and they ate good food. And if you have a lot of weight to lose, that's plenty. You can get it done.
Yep.
So the nutrition, I would say the structure, the go-to foods, and teaching people habits stuff like meal prep, which is over talked about, but can't be under stress because it paves the path to success in the week. And if you were to really gather a room of 100 people who have lost weight and kept it off, or professionals, and you ask them, they'll have these elements. They probably may be unconscious for them, but they'll have go-to meals. They'll have a general strategy of when they have their nutrition and their plan, and it'll work for them in their schedule. So these are things we think are very important. And I think they're more important than looking at, should I follow a plant-based diet? Should I follow a keto diet? You can fit those kinds of foods, whatever you want to do, into 100%. This kind of framework. But those are the trees. This is the forest. We got to get the forest going first.
You're 100% on point.
And I like the way that it's simple. And I like the way it's simple, and you kind of work with the person, not having them, impose new things or new meals or hear that everyone signs. I mean, it's true, Mehdi, right? Everyone signs up for these meals or
the meal plans. It's so oversold, and it's so much bullshit, and they use the worst products. In my opinion, I know a guy who set up a kitchen, and he was like, we use the most shit chicken you'll ever see on the face of the earth. And for me personally, and I like what you said, macro counting for me was tedious, and it got too much at one point. And I lose more weight when I'm not counting macros. And now it's kind of I know how much I'm consuming. I know it's weird to say, but I've understood my body, and I've understood portions enough to say, okay, well, this is probably my net worth of carbs for the day. I'm still under consuming protein. Protein, people think you can, it's easy to get your protein in, but it's really hard if you're an athlete to get that amount of protein in. And counting macros is tough. And I love what you say, because you can eat a lot of good food. You can have a hefty plate of vegetables, and
Oh,
be
yeah.
really full for hours. It's not
yeah.
that difficult to do. And I love that with what you're preaching to people, and the fact that you tell people to go take a walk. That's the first thing that I tell guys at work, because, in my office,
Yeah.
they all come up to me. They're like, dude, how do you do it? I need to lose my gut. I need to lose this. I'm like, all right, well, here's something simple. Just walk. Don't eat anything out of a bag. Don't eat anything processed.
Those two things.
That's it.
Yeah.
You just do those two things. You're losing
Yeah.
10, 15 pounds, like right off the bat, for 2 weeks.
Yes.
You do that, boom. It's not rocket science.
Uh-huh.
And we talked about this before the show started, about nutrition and the hyperpalatability of food and the processed food at that. I mean,
Yeah.
Dr. D, when you get that endorphin release when you eat a bag of Doritos, you're going to keep going back for more. So how have you seen that, especially in the United States? How have you gone about that with trying to get people away from stuff like that? Because you guys got better food than what we got over here, man.
Right. I mean,
Especially it's easy. You open a bag and everything. People look for easy things. And so you have to find a replacement, I guess.
yeah, I mean, that's part of it. Okay. So there's strategies, there's replacement strategies, but I think first off, each day is kind of like a fresh slate. And when you start the day off on a wrong foot, it kind of perpetuates like bad nutrition later in the day. So if you have a crap early part of the nutrition, you're eating a bunch of sugar, processed grains, all the cereals, the bag, like whatever you're having in the morning, it can set you on this blood sugar tail spike. That kind of carries on the rest of the day, and your nutrition ends up being pretty bad. So I believe each day it's really important to start off with stuff that tastes good. Like I love shakes, I love overnight oats, I love egg recipes for people, whatever this is. But like that first meal should be high in micronutrients, meaning you get the energy, your body feels full and happy. It received quality nutrition. And over time, when you start doing that, your palate will retrain because it's like these foods that are engineered to be incredibly addictive, incredibly sweet, incredibly salty, and they're meant for us to get addicted and buy more of these things. It's almost like we're listening to music on like 100% volume all the time, that when you go to, let's say, eat an apple or something like that, it just doesn't do it for you. But what's amazing is actually the taste buds and the palate totally changes, and it can change pretty rapidly over a course of a month, where you start eating healthier. You control those first couple meals of the day. And as you're going on this journey, then the foods that you didn't used to like, you start to enjoy. We have program members be like, man, I used to drink like 6 liters of diet soda like all the time. And now I taste this stuff and I can't even imagine that I thought this tasted good. So there's truly like a physiologic basis to changing of taste buds. And it's like any kind of like good detox program. It starts off with abstinence. Like you got to get away from this stuff. And what does that require? It requires that strong why and a structure of what you're going to be doing instead. Because it's one thing to say, I'm not going to have my chips or my soda or whatever I normally have. Like that's great. But what are you going to have instead? Like you need to have some kind of substitute. So we're big believers that like there needs to be this, the word balance is thrown around a lot, but you need to have both, consistency and variety. And you're not supposed to be repressing all of your urges for like good foods or stuff like this all the time. You need to be incorporating these into your life. We help them pre-plan a free meal every single week, or if they're starting off maybe once every 2 weeks. And people call these cheat meals, but I think that actually the name itself is a misnomer because it sets up this idea that you're doing something bad by having these foods. Whereas we call them free meals in the sense that these are like pre-planned times where okay, you're going out to, let's just say it's not coronavirus, right? And you're going out to dinner with your family and your friends on Friday night, and ahead of time that you're going to be enjoying some food that's not on your normal thing. You might be having the burger, the pizza, but that's planned. And the next day you can get right back onto your other thing. Maybe you did a workout that day. Maybe you ate a little lower carb that day to empty out the glycogen going into this bigger meal. There's ways you can kind of build this into, again, a system so you can enjoy this stuff, but also not become a slave to your tastes as well. And it changes over time because, I think it's a quote from some kind of supermodel. It's like nothing tastes as good as skinny feels. And I think it's just over time, as you begin to regain your health, it's a weird thing that happens is when you get your body more clean, when you start to eat those foods you used to eat, you feel like death. And this happens to a lot of people. I don't know if I binge out on stuff that I, could have eaten a long time ago, like I don't feel good afterwards. So it's cool because your body almost gives you like this negative reinforcement, gives you a little whip on the butt when you do eat something, when your body's a little more clean, and it actually keeps you on track. You're like, my digestion was so off. I had a stuffy nose. My joints hurt. It was not good. So these are some ideas in thinking about it, but ultimately it's each of our individual journeys to kind of figure this stuff out, to know Like, what are get very conscious about it. What are my trap foods? What are the things I'm always going for? What time of the day am I typically having these things? Late night snacking ends up being a problem for a lot of different people. And so one thing
For me,
yeah, right. I mean, it's
I'm one
easy,
of
right?
them. Yes.
You had a long day. You want to unwind. You put
You're
something
watching
on.
TV. Yes.
Yeah, and you, like mindless eating, and it's good. So one thing we help people do is like cut down on that alone can really help improve someone's health pretty dramatically. You have a really good dinner. We have people like basically stop after that point. Maybe they have dinner at like, let's say 6, 7 p.m. And at that point, they basically just brush their teeth and drink tea and stuff like that and start this fasting, even if they're having breakfast the next day. But understanding and being more aware of where those gaps in your unique lifestyle are going to be, where are those slip up points, and then having some kind of system strategy in there seems to be very important.
But you know what? I also liked what you were saying. I mean, you didn't use the word guilt, but what a lot of people do, and I remember earlier when I used to do this, as soon as I said to myself, I'm on a diet, that's the day I eat the worst. But that's not the only thing is that I realized that when I did screw up, I felt so guilty that I did screw up that I would just give up and say, that's it.
Yeah.
I'm never going to do. And I think what you were saying is that it makes really perfect sense. When I started to realize that it's okay, Juliet, you screwed up today, but tomorrow I'm going to make it up by not having I can plan something different, or I go to a different place to eat. And I think this is what people really need to understand, not only with the way they live their lifestyle. I work with a lot of people that are living with guilt for whatever it is for a long period of time, which also plays a role in the lifestyle that they are pursuing or if they're exercising. And I do see a lot of people like, oh, no, doc, I screwed up today. And that means that I've screwed up for a whole week by the time they come back to talk to me, because they're punishing themselves. And I think it's great that you are making, you're saying that, okay, well, you didn't go in the right path today. You went out with family and you ended up eating a lot of pizzas. I don't really think we need to just continue to harm ourselves by saying, oh my God, why did I do this? Like I used to do it all the time. Oh my God, why did I do this? Why did I do this? And my mind becomes so occupied with what is the next thing I can do to hurt myself, really punish myself, which means eating more Nutella and eating, I don't know if you guys know what Nutella is
I do.
And then I realized I'm like, no, I'm not going to do this. And this is what I teach people, like, okay, we screwed up. Yeah. All right. Then what can we do tomorrow? And what can I do tomorrow? And then tomorrow I don't have as many, fatty food and the other thing, it's like, there's a lot of research that says certain foods, which happens to be carbs and sugary, they actually decrease your serotonin. So I educate my clients with a lot of that. There are certain got to stay away from because you're depressed, which also kind of feeds into you got to eat healthy if you don't want to be depressed. And then if you don't eat healthy one day, it's okay. You're going to be depressed. We'll be back on track the next day. So I kind of really like the idea of, yes, I don't want people to feel guilty. And I think that's why people break the habit of this. I'm on a diet. No. And then I'm not on a diet. Then I'm feeling guilty.
Yeah, it's that perfect all or nothing mentality. That's such a fallacy, right? It's like no airplane ever flies in a straight line. It's this zig and this zag. So it's like, how to get out of that? You need something to glide back to the next day. You need that structure. Otherwise, you just get into this black hole of self-loathing behaviors, thinking that you need to be perfect. Oh, I'll restart the diet again fresh tomorrow. Like that's just a bunch of BS. Like if we look at why does walking work, right? Walking works for many different reasons. You're burning low calories. You're helping regulate your appetite better. You're getting a better oxygen, better breathing. It's like, but why does walking work? Because you look over the course of a week, you walked 30 minutes a day in 3 10-minute chunks one day, but you do that over a course of 7 days. Like you've accumulated a lot of movement. It's the same thing with calories and nutrition too. It's like, it's okay that you had an extra 800 calories at dinner this time above what might have been suitable. That's fine. In the grand scheme of the week, it's totally fine. But it's just like when we allow these things to bleed into other days, that's when we really start to gain a lot of weight and get into a bad place.
No, that's cool, man.
I ate very bad today for lunch, but I'm not feeling too guilty. I'll start over tomorrow.
There's nothing called eating bad. You just have to overindulge and then you reel yourself back in.
Oh no. Once I tell you what I ate, you think about it. But it's all right.
I've gone away from saying, oh, that's bad or whatever. Like now it's just like, dude, just reel yourself back in the next day. I mean, it's not the end of the world. Like, we all have to overindulge at some point in our life. You can't, unless you're Tom Brady and you're like, dude, I only eat avocado ice cream once a week maybe or once a month. Like, you're a top level athlete. You do it for a living.
Yeah.
Normal people, no. I mean, it's cool. Before we wrap up, how can people find you? What services do you offer that people could probably look into?
Yeah. So 2 places would be good to check out. We have fitfatherproject.com and we have fitmotherproject.com, where you can see a bunch of case studies. We have free meal plans and workouts on there, a cool blog, access to our store and our programs there. Other good places are on YouTube. We have awesome channels, Fit Father Project and Fit Mother Project on YouTube. You can just type that in. I think we have over like 500 videos of ranting about different health, fitness, motivation, mindset, neuroscience stuff. So if you want more long form content, that would be a great place to check out. And then I think there's also contact forms on our website if you want to get in contact with me too.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show. We definitely love to have you back on. I would love to have you back on to talk about the more fitness side of it, definitely.
Yeah.
The CrossFit side. I'm trying to get Dr. D into CrossFit, but she won't join the cult.
I think she'd kill it.
I think so too, man. Like, I think she definitely would.
It's that structure, That's why I like walking. Walking is like you just walk anywhere, anything. You can park your car far away and walk, but it's structured. It's too structured for me, but I'm looking into it. I maybe in the summer I'll start.
I want to see you with some huge traps next time I come on,
Yeah, I
will. From those power shrugs, right?
I know, right? I know, man.
All right, well, thank you guys. This was true pleasure. Yeah, I want to see a trap picture before I'm on next. Thank you both.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. A.
Thanks for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed it, please head over to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. You can also find us on Instagram at The Project Thank You, and join us next time.